Episode 295, Changing Systems Takes Time. This is the Change Underground. I'm your host, John Moore. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. There's going to be a tsunami of I told you so's. Stand by. Quote, Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa promised in his 2019 election campaign to transition the country's farmers to organic agriculture over a period of 10 years. Last April, Rajapaksa's government made good on that promise, imposing a nationwide ban on the importation and use of synthetic fertilisers and pesticides, and ordering the country's 2 million farmers to go organic, end quote. So a 10-year plan became a right-now plan. Surprisingly, not. The transition has not been as planned. A 10-year transition was possible, and instant change was always going to fail. I've mentioned the Cuban situation after the collapse of the Soviet Union before, but a quick reminder will help. Quote, when the USSR collapsed in 1990-91, Cuba's ability to feed itself collapsed with it. Within a year, the country had lost 80% of its trade, explains the Cuba Organic Support Group. Over 1.3 million tonnes of chemical fertilisers a year were lost. Fuel for transporting produce from the fields to the towns dried up. People started to go hungry. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization estimated that calorie intake plunged from 2,600 a head in the late 1980s to between 1,000 and 1,500 by 1993, end quote. The Cubans had no warning. The Sri Lankans were, allegedly, planning for the change. The Cubans adjusted because they had no choice. The Sri Lankans might well have timed it perfectly given the rising prices of chemical fertilisers, pesticides and herbicides, if they can be acquired at all. But they still should have done more planning. What appears to have happened in Sri Lanka is the tap was just turned off, Cuban style, but with no education, production system choices, or much in support. As I've mentioned in other episodes, I've seen firsthand a world-renowned, according to the owners, organic farm. Whilst they don't add anything chemical, they do run through swimming pools full of diesel weekly. The key to the Cuban solution was shortening the supply chains and growing food where people were so that they could consume it there. In Sri Lanka, nothing much changed except the chemical inputs were removed. And the reason chemical poisons, herbicides, pesticides and fungicides are needed is because monocultural production is so out of whack and so far from biomimicry that the poisons are necessary because of the pest burdens, be that animal or plant. Could Sri Lanka have achieved its aim of full organic production? Well, let's look at a smaller version of an island that is fully organic. And this is a story in the Daily Telegraph from the 9th of July 2014, repeating a story from the Daily Examiner. And this one is entitled, Mororo Farmer Helps Mel Gibson's Fijian Island. Quote, for the past 2 years, that's 2012 and 2013, Mororo farmer Mike Smith has been plugging away at a top-secret project involving an Academy Award-winning actor, agriculture and an idyllic Fijian island. Now the secret's out. Describing it as one of his biggest achievements, the agricultural expert spoke to the Daily Examiner about his role in helping Mungo Island, owned by actor-director Mel Gibson, gain full organic accreditation, end quote. Now I should point out that Mungo Island is a mere 22 square kilometres and Sri Lanka is 65,610 square kilometres, and that 22 square kilometres had a committed owner, financial backing and qualified experienced people driving the process. 10 years may have been ambitious for Sri Lanka, but not impossible with the right leadership. The first year has not gone well, and the country is now allowing synthetic fertiliser back into the country. Whether or not this remains a failed experiment or lesson learned and implemented, only time will tell. I can't imagine the fertiliser and other ag chemical companies were sitting around with their hands in their laps saying, Oh well, that's Sri Lanka's decision, no dramas. I'm sure we won't miss the profits. And if it all goes well, it might end our businesses, but that's okay, we'll just watch and learn. Okay, so I'm not overly cynical, just proportionately so. And I'm guessing some sort of backgrounding or even sabotage would not have been unexpected. But remember, when your non-organic friends point out the Sri Lankan example, to direct them to the Fijian model. Direct them too, if you're able, to your garden. The more examples we can build, the better, be it in vegetable gardening, herb, fruit, animal integrated, or just animal production gardens. Think eggs, chooks and rabbits. We can all set examples. If you're not yet growing and would like some guidance, the discount is still on for the No Dig Garden course over at World Organic News. It's currently selling at $17, not the usual $149 until the world starts to return to a little more normality and supply chains open up and so on. That's almost a 90% saving just so that we can get people growing. So if you've been put off in the past, now is the time to jump in and learn. If you know anyone who would be interested, and the more people we can get growing the better, please let them know. I have a link in the show notes, or you can go to the worldorganicnews.com website and click the course tab. Please spread the word. We need to get as much food happening as possible, as close to the people eating it as we can. The best time to move from consumption to production was probably 50 years ago. The second best time is now. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Thank you all for listening. I'll be back next week.